smell that cheap lotion and bus sweat. Somebody let street trash wander into my lobby.
Bradley Thornton grabbed the lemon water off the counter and threw it straight in her face. Then he seized her arm and dragged her toward the door, screaming,
"Get this filth out of my hotel now!"
Olivia Hammond didn't struggle. She looked up at him.
I just wanted to ask about the hotel, that's all.
He shoved her through the revolving door onto the sidewalk, brushed his hands like he'd touched something rotten.
You look just like a dead rat. Filthy and stinking from the gutter. That's where you belong.
She stood there, dripping. No one in that lobby knew who she was. Not yet, but they would. Every last one of them was going to pay.
Let me take you back.
3 hours before the water, before the screaming, before Bradley Thornton grabbed a woman's arm and dragged her across his own lobby floor. Olivia Hammond woke at 6:15 on a Tuesday morning. The bedroom was quiet. Pale light crept through the curtains of a 3-bedroom row house in downtown Charleston. Not a penthouse, not a mansion. A simple brick townhouse she bought years ago because it reminded her of her grandmother's place in Savannah. She made her coffee black, drank it from a chipped ceramic mug that said, "World's Okayest Boss," a gift from her CFO, Raymond, who thought he was funny. She stood at the kitchen counter in a t-shirt and shorts, scrolling through her phone. Not stock prices, not revenue dashboards, guest reviews. 1 star. The Belmont, Charleston. Staff was cold and unwelcoming, asked for help at the front desk, and was ignored for 10 minutes while they helped a white couple who arrived after us. Won't be returning. Olivia set the mug down. She read it again. The Belmont was her flagship, the crown jewel of Hammond Hospitality Group. 12 luxury properties across the East Coast, all built from nothing. Olivia started as a housekeeper at 16, scrubbing bathroom tiles for minimum wage in a Savannah motel. By 25, she managed her first hotel. By 30, she owned it. By 40, she owned 12. But she never lost the habit. Every month, she picked one property and showed up unannounced. No advance call, no corporate escort, no name badge. She dressed plain, the kind of clothes that made people decide who she was before she opened her mouth. That was the point. She wanted to see how her hotels treated the people nobody was trying to impress. Today she was visiting the Belmont. She hadn't been there in 8 months. A surgery. Loss of time. In her absence, a new general manager had been hired through a recruiting firm. His name was Bradley Thornton. She'd read his resume. 15 years in luxury hospitality. Glowing references. Impressive numbers. She'd never seen his face. She pulled on a linen dress, flat sandals, a small leather crossbody bag. No jewelry, no makeup. She looked in the hallway mirror and saw exactly what she intended. A woman no one would look twice at. She drove her own car, a gray Honda Civic that blended into traffic like a ghost. The Belmont sat in the heart of Charleston's historic district. White columns framed the entrance. Wrought iron balconies lined the 2nd and 3rd floors. The courtyard garden, Olivia's personal design, bloomed with jasmine and magnolia. The scent hit her before she reached the front steps. She pushed through the revolving door at 10:15 a.m. The lobby opened up like a cathedral. Marble floors polished to a mirror finish. A center table with a towering arrangement of white lilies, her signature choice. Crystal chandeliers hung from a ceiling painted the color of cream. Soft jazz floated from hidden speakers. The air smelled like money and magnolia. Olivia paused. She looked up at the chandelier she'd personally selected 3 years ago from a dealer in Savannah. She ran her fingertips along the marble counter she'd had custom cut from a quarry in Vermont. She breathed in the lilies. Then she noticed the changes. The staff photos behind the front desk had been rearranged. Every face was white. The multilingual welcome signs she'd installed, English, Spanish, French, Mandarin, were gone. The community art wall she'd created to showcase local black artists had been stripped bare and replaced with generic landscape prints. Coastal sunsets, sailboats. Nothing that said anything. Nothing that meant anything. Olivia's expression didn't change, but her eyes moved slowly across every detail. She was cataloging, filing, remembering. She walked toward the front desk. Across the lobby, near the service elevator, a woman in a housekeeper's uniform stopped mid-stroke. Doris Fenton, early 60s, gray streaks in her hair. She'd worked at the Belmont for 22 years, long before Olivia bought it. She'd watched Olivia transform this place from a rundown inn into something extraordinary. Doris recognized her instantly. Her mouth opened, then closed. She looked toward the front desk where Bradley Thornton stood, adjusting his cuffs. She looked back at Olivia. Her grip tightened on the mop handle. She didn't say a word. She took one step back into the service hallway. She pulled out her phone. Her hands were shaking. Something was about to happen. Doris could feel it, the way you feel thunder before you hear it. A low vibration in the floor, a change in the pressure of the air. The lobby smelled like lilies and money, but underneath, something else was building. Something that smelled like a storm. Olivia approached the front desk with the same unhurried pace she used for everything. Calm, measured. Like a woman who had learned long ago that the world would try to rush her, and she'd decided, no. Megan Collier was on duty. Late 20s, blonde hair pinned tight, a smile that switched on and off like a desk lamp depending on who was standing in front of her. She was laughing with a white couple checking in. Warm, bright, effortless. "Oh, absolutely, Mr. and Mrs. Whitfield. Let me upgrade you to the Harbor Suite. Complimentary champagne is already on its way up." The couple smiled. Megan smiled. Everyone smiled. Olivia waited. The couple left. Megan's eyes drifted to Olivia. The smile didn't just fade, it evaporated. Her gaze started at Olivia's sandals and climbed slowly. The linen dress, the crossbody bag, the bare wrists, the braids. By the time Megan's eyes reached Olivia's face, her expression had already made its decision. "Can I help you?" The pause before help carried the weight of 100 assumptions. "Yes," Olivia said. "I'd like to speak with the general manager. I have some concerns about the property." Megan blinked. "Concerns?" "About staffing, and some changes I've noticed." Megan tilted her head, the kind of tilt that says, "I'm being patient with you." She picked up the internal phone, cupped her hand over the receiver, and whispered, just loud enough for Olivia to hear, "There's a woman out here who doesn't really look like one of our guests. She's asking about the property, staffing concerns or something. You might want to come out." She hung up, turned back to Olivia with a smile that was all teeth and no warmth. "He'll be right with you, ma'am." Ma'am. The word landed like a door closing. Olivia waited. She stood at the counter and watched the lobby move around her. A bellhop rushed past with monogrammed luggage. A white businessman in a tailored suit was escorted to the elevator by a smiling concierge. A family with 3 kids checked in and was offered a welcome basket with chocolate and wine. Nobody offered Olivia anything. Nobody looked at her. She was standing at the center of a room designed to make people feel welcome, and she had never felt more invisible. 3 minutes passed. Then the office door opened. Bradley Thornton walked out like he owned the air in the room. Mid-50s, silver hair swept back, polo shirt tucked into pressed chinos, a Rolex that caught the chandelier light with every gesture. He moved the way certain men move, chest first, chin up, eyes already judging before his mouth said a word. He looked at Olivia. The assessment took less than 2 seconds. His upper lip shifted, just barely, just enough. The same look a man gives a stain on his shoe. "What do you need?" Not a question, a dismissal shaped like one. "I'd like to discuss this property," Olivia said. "I've noticed some changes to the decor, the staffing, the welcome materials. I have some questions." Bradley's eyes narrowed. "Questions? About my hotel?" His hotel. Olivia noted the word, filed it. "Are you a guest here?" "Not exactly." "Do you have a reservation?" "No." "Then I'm not sure what you think you're doing in my lobby." He crossed his arms. His Rolex caught the light again. "We get people wandering in off the street all the time. Tourist season. They see the columns and the chandeliers, and they think it's a public building. It's not." "I understand that," Olivia said, "but I'd still like to—" "Let me stop you right there." Bradley stepped closer. His voice dropped, but it was the kind of drop that's meant to be heard, a performance of control. "Look around this lobby. Look at the guests sitting in that lounge. Look at the staff. Now look at yourself." He paused, let his eyes drag down her body once more. Sandals, linen, no watch, no ring. "You don't fit here. I don't know if you're confused or lost or just trying to get out of the heat, but this hotel has a standard, a reputation, and part of my job is protecting that." "Protecting it from what?" Olivia asked. Her voice was steady, quiet, almost gentle. Bradley smiled, the kind of smile that carries no warmth at all. "From people who bring the standard down." The lobby was listening now. Conversations had thinned. A couple on the settee near the window had stopped talking. Megan stood behind the desk with her arms crossed, watching like a spectator at a show she'd seen before. Olivia didn't move. "I'd like to continue looking around. I have every right to be in this space." Something shifted behind Bradley's eyes. The amusement drained. What replaced it was colder, harder. "No," he said. "You don't." He turned to the front desk. "Megan, note this down. From now on, anyone who shows up looking like this doesn't come through the front door. Redirect them to the service entrance. Or call the police. I don't care which." Megan nodded. She was already writing. Olivia stood still. "I'm not leaving." Bradley's jaw tightened, and the muscles in his neck corded. He reached across the counter, fast, deliberate, and grabbed the glass of lemon water sitting beside Megan's keyboard. Full glass. Ice cubes floating, condensation running down the side. He turned and threw it directly into Olivia's face. The water hit like a slap. Ice cracked against her forehead. Lemon water flooded her eyes, her nose, her mouth. It ran down her braids in cold streams, soaking the collar of her dress, pooling in the hollow of her throat. The cubes bounced off her shoulders and shattered on the marble floor, sharp little sounds in the enormous silence. The lobby froze. 30 people. Not one moved. A child sitting on his mother's lap near the fountain pointed. "Mama, why did he throw water on that lady?" The mother pulled his hand down and whispered, "Don't look." Olivia blinked. Water ran into her eyes. She wiped it with the back of her hand, one slow, steady motion. She looked at Bradley. Her face was absolutely still. No anger, no tears, nothing he could use. "I just wanted to ask about the hotel," she said. "That's all." Bradley grabbed her arm. His fingers dug into the soft flesh above her elbow. He yanked her forward and marched her toward the revolving door. Her sandals slipped on the wet marble. She stumbled once. He didn't slow down. "This is a luxury establishment," he shouted. His voice rang off the marble walls, the chandeliers, the 20-foot ceiling. "Not a shelter, not a bus station. Security! Calvin, get this filth out of my hotel, now!" Calvin Moore came running from the security office. Big man, crew cut. He saw Bradley gripping Olivia's arm. He saw the water dripping from her face. He saw the entire lobby watching in frozen silence. He hesitated. "Sir, maybe we should just—" "I said now, Calvin." Calvin took Olivia's other arm, gentler than Bradley, but firm. They walked her to the revolving door. Bradley pushed it. The glass spun. Warm Charleston air rushed in. Olivia was shoved through onto the sidewalk. She stumbled on the stone steps, caught herself, stood straight. Bradley stood in the doorframe. He brushed his hands on his pants, slowly, deliberately, like he'd touched something diseased. "You look just like a dead rat," he said, "filthy and stinking from the gutter. That's where you belong." He turned to Megan, who stood behind him in the lobby holding her phone. "Call the police if she steps 1 foot back inside." The revolving door spun shut. The glass reflected the chandelier, the lilies, the marble, and Olivia's face on the other side, still dripping. The doorman stood 3 feet away. He stared at the ground. A bellhop loading luggage into a black sedan for a white family glanced at Olivia, then looked away like she was something he wasn't supposed to see. Olivia stood on the sidewalk. The Charleston sun pressed down on her shoulders. Lemon water dried sticky on her skin. The jasmine from the courtyard garden drifted through the air. The garden she'd designed herself, with her own sketches, planted with her own money. She stood in front of a building she owned. A building she'd bought when it was rotting. A building she'd rebuilt from the foundation up. And a man she'd never met had just thrown water in her face and called her a dead rat. 5 seconds. She gave herself 5 seconds. Then she reached into her crossbody bag, pulled out her phone, and dialed. "Raymond, get the lawyers, get the board, pull every second of security footage from the Belmont. Last 6 months. I want it all by tonight." A pause, then quieter. "And clear my schedule for Friday. I'm going back." Bradley Thornton walked back into his office like a man who'd just won a bar fight, chest out, shoulders loose. The grin on his face was the kind you wear when you believe the world works exactly the way it should, with you on top. He dropped into his leather chair and kicked his feet up on the desk. His office smelled like cologne and self-satisfaction. Through the glass wall, he could see the lobby returning to normal. Guests resuming conversations, staff straightening their postures. The wet patch on the marble floor already being mopped by a housekeeper who kept her eyes down. Megan appeared in his doorway. She was smiling. "That was handled perfectly, Mr. Thornton." Of course it was. He loosened his collar. "You give people like that an inch, they take the whole building. I've seen it 100 times. You have to be firm." Megan nodded. She lingered. She wanted to say more, something flattering, something that confirmed his version of events. The guests seemed relieved. They should be. That's what they pay for. A certain atmosphere. A certain standard. He waved his hand. "Close the door and send an email to the front desk team. I want a reminder about screening protocols. Anyone who doesn't match our guest profile doesn't get past the welcome mat." Megan left. The email went out at 11:42 a.m. Subject line: Lobby standards. Friendly reminder. The language was careful. No slurs, no direct references to race, but every employee who read it understood exactly what it meant. Trish Underwood read it at her concierge station. She read it twice. Her stomach turned. She closed her laptop and stared at the lobby floor where, 30 minutes ago, ice cubes had skidded across marble and a woman had been dragged out by her arm. Trish didn't say anything. She didn't know what to say. She didn't know who to say it to. She just sat there, her hands flat on the desk, feeling something crack open inside her chest that she couldn't push back down. Bradley's door was open again by noon. He was on the phone, laughing. Life had already moved on for him. It was Tuesday. The weekend forecast looked strong. A senator's wife was arriving Saturday. Everything was fine. Everything was not fine. 6 miles away, in a modest townhouse on the east side of Charleston, Olivia Hammond sat at her kitchen table, with her hair still damp and the faint smell of lemon on her skin. Her linen dress was in the washing machine. She wore a plain t-shirt and sweatpants now. A mug of cold coffee sat untouched beside her laptop. Raymond Ellis sat across from her, late 40s, sharp jaw, reading glasses pushed up on his forehead. He'd driven over within the hour. He hadn't said much. He didn't need to. He'd known Olivia for 15 years. He knew what her silence meant. Her laptop was open to the Belmont's internal HR portal. Raymond had pulled the access codes from corporate. On the screen, 6 months of staffing records, termination files, performance reviews, expense reports, and guest complaint logs. They started reading. By midnight, they had the full picture. 11 employees of color had been terminated or pressured into resigning since Bradley Thornton took over. 11 in 6 months. A black sous chef reassigned from the signature restaurant to a basement prep kitchen without explanation. Terminated when she complained. A Hispanic valet told he didn't project the right image. Moved to laundry. Then let go. A black concierge given 3 written warnings in 2 weeks for offenses no one else was ever written up for. Forced out by the 3rd. 0 white employees terminated in the same period. 0. Guest complaints told the same story from the other side. A black couple from Atlanta described being stopped in the hallway and asked to show their room key. Twice in one evening. A Hispanic family wrote that their children were asked to leave the pool area by a staff member who didn't realize they were guests. Each complaint had been filed in the system and marked resolved. No follow-up, no investigation, no action. Then there were the expense reports. Bradley had billed $90,000 in personal expenses to the hotel over 6 months. Dinners at restaurants with no business justification, a country club membership, golf outings, a weekend at a spa resort in Hilton Head charged as a leadership retreat for one person. Raymond took off his glasses and rubbed his eyes. "It's worse than I thought." Olivia didn't answer. She was watching something else. Security footage. She'd pulled up the lobby camera feed from the past 3 months. She watched on fast forward, and the pattern was unmistakable. Guests of color were approached within seconds of entering the lobby, asked for ID, asked for reservation confirmations, asked if they needed directions. White guests walked straight to the desk and were greeted with champagne. Then she pulled up Tuesday's footage. Her own footage. She watched herself walk into the lobby, watched herself pause at the chandelier, watched Megan's smile disappear, watched Bradley walk out from his office, watched the conversation she couldn't hear on the silent footage, but didn't need to. His body language said everything. The lean, the crossed arms, the slow scan of her body, then the water. She watched the glass leave his hand, watched it hit her face, watched the ice scatter across the floor like broken teeth, watched him grab her arm, watched herself stumble on the wet marble, watched the revolving door spin. She watched it all the way through. At 11 p.m. on Wednesday, Raymond's phone buzzed. An email from the Hammond Hospitality corporate address. Sender, Trish Underwood. Subject line, "I can't stay silent anymore." 3 pages, single-spaced. Trish described everything. The firings she'd witnessed, the screening protocols, the comments Bradley made behind closed doors. These people drag down the brand. Once you let one in, more follow. This hotel was built for a certain class of guest, and I intend to keep it that way. She described the Tuesday incident in detail. The water, the dragging, the words. She described the email Bradley sent afterward. She described the silence of every person in that lobby, including herself. The last paragraph read, "I don't know if this email will reach anyone who cares, but I saw what happened on Tuesday, and I can't pretend it was normal. It wasn't normal. It was one of the worst things I've ever watched happen to another person. And I stood there and did nothing. I'm doing something now." Raymond forwarded it to Olivia with one line, "We have a second witness." Olivia closed her laptop. She sat in the dark kitchen for a long time. The refrigerator hummed. The street outside was quiet. A cat knocked over a trash can lid somewhere down the block, a distant metallic clatter. Thursday. Doris Fenton called. Raymond answered. The voice on the other end was steady, but tight. The voice of a woman who had been holding something for a very long time and was finally letting go. "She was here Tuesday. I saw everything. He threw water in her face and dragged her out like an animal. I've been keeping a notebook for 6 months. Every incident, every comment, every name. I have 22 years in this building, and I have never seen anything like what that man has done to this place." Raymond recorded the call. Doris agreed to provide her notebook. She agreed to testify if it came to that. Thursday night, Olivia assembled her team. Raymond Ellis, 2 attorneys from corporate counsel, an HR director, and a private security firm, not hotel security. Outside, independent security. She chose her outfit, not the linen dress. A tailored black suit with sharp shoulders, black heels, diamond earrings her grandmother had left her, small, elegant, and worth more than Bradley's Rolex. A leather portfolio containing the Belmont's original purchase agreement, her signature on the bottom line. She looked at herself in the bathroom mirror. The last time she stood in front of a mirror in this house, she'd been dripping with lemon water, hands shaking, jaw clenched. Not tonight. Tonight, her hands were steady. Her eyes were clear. Her face carried the expression of a woman who had built an empire from a mop and a bucket, and was about to remind someone exactly what that meant. Raymond made 2 calls. The first to the Charleston Police Department's non-emergency line, requesting an officer available at the Belmont Friday morning in case of incident. The second to a contact at the Charleston Post and Courier. "Off the record," Raymond said, "for now. But you'll want a photographer at the Belmont around 9 a.m. Friday. Trust me." Friday, 8:45 a.m. The Belmont lobby hummed with its usual morning rhythm, fresh lilies on the center table, jazz drifting from the speakers. The marble floor polished to a mirror finish. Bellhops moved luggage on brass carts. The espresso machine behind the lounge bar hissed and steamed. Bradley Thornton was in his office early. Fresh shirt, pressed slacks. He was reviewing the weekend occupancy forecast. 94% booked. The senator's wife arriving Saturday. A corporate retreat group on Sunday. He'd ordered fresh flowers for the VIP suite himself. He was humming. Megan was at the front desk, sorting check-in packets. Trish sat at the concierge station. Her hands were folded in her lap. She hadn't slept well in 3 days. Her eyes kept drifting to the spot on the marble floor where the ice cubes had scattered on Tuesday. Doris Fenton was near the service elevator. Same spot as Tuesday. Same mop, same uniform. But today she wasn't mopping. She was waiting. At exactly 9:15, the revolving door began to spin. Olivia Hammond stepped into the lobby. Black suit, tailored, sharp at the shoulders. Black heels that clicked on the marble with a sound like a clock counting down. Diamond earrings catching the chandelier light, the same chandeliers she'd selected 3 years ago. Her hair was pulled back. Her posture was straight. Her face carried nothing. No anger, no smile, no warmth. Just focus. Raymond Ellis walked at her right. Dark suit, leather briefcase, reading glasses folded in his breast pocket. Behind them, 2 attorneys in charcoal suits. An HR director carrying a banker's box of files. A private security consultant, broad-shouldered, hands clasped in front, eyes scanning the room. 6 people, walking in formation, heels and hard soles echoing across the marble like a drumline. The lobby went quiet, not slowly, instantly. Conversations stopped mid-sentence. A coffee cup paused halfway to someone's lips. A bellhop froze with his hand on a luggage cart. Megan looked up from the front desk. Her customer service smile activated. Automatic, mechanical. Then it stalled. Her eyes locked on Olivia's face. The recognition hit like a slap. Same face, same woman. Everything else, completely different. Megan's smile collapsed. Her hand drifted to the phone on the desk, then pulled back. She didn't know who to call. Trish stood up from the concierge station. Her fingers gripped the edge of the desk until her knuckles turned white. She exhaled, long, shaking, like she'd been holding her breath since Tuesday. Doris leaned her mop against the wall, folded her arms across her chest, and for the first time in 6 months, she smiled. A slow, quiet smile, the kind that says, "Finally." Bradley heard the silence. Silence in a hotel lobby at 9:15 on a Friday morning is wrong, and he knew it. He looked up from his desk, through the glass wall of his office, and saw the group standing in the center of the lobby. He straightened his collar, smoothed his hair. He didn't recognize Olivia, not yet. The suit, the heels, the entourage. This looked like money. This looked like a VIP. This looked like an opportunity. He walked out of his office with his biggest smile, the one he saved for people who mattered. "Good morning. Welcome to the Belmont." He extended his hand, firm grip ready, eye contact locked, full charm. "Bradley Thornton, General Manager. How can I help you today?" His hand hung in the air. Olivia looked at it. Then she looked at his face. She let 3 seconds pass. 3 long, silent, devastating seconds. "You don't recognize me," she said. It wasn't a question. Bradley's smile flickered. His hand wavered. "Should I? Tuesday. This lobby. You threw a glass of water in my face." Her voice was level, each word placed like a stone on a scale. "You grabbed my arm and dragged me to that door. You told your staff I was filth. You called me a dead rat." The blood drained from Bradley's face in real time. It started at his forehead and moved down, like watching a tide pull away from shore. His extended hand dropped to his side. His mouth opened, closed, opened. "Wait, you... That was... My name is Olivia Hammond." Her voice carried across the marble floor, up to the chandelier, into every corner of the room. "I am the founder and sole owner of Hammond Hospitality Group. I own this hotel. I own this lobby. I own the chandelier above your head and the marble beneath your feet. I own every room, every floor, every door, including the one you shoved me through on Tuesday." She paused, let the silence do its work. "And you just tried to shake the same hand you used to drag me out." Bradley's face had gone from red to white to gray. His lips moved, but nothing came out. Behind him, Megan gripped the edge of the front desk like the floor was tilting beneath her. 2 guests near the lounge stood up from their chairs. A bellhop set down a suitcase and didn't pick it up. Doris hadn't moved. She stood by the service elevator with her arms folded, watching with the calm, steady gaze of a woman who had waited 22 years for this exact moment. The lobby was silent. 40 people. No one breathed. And Bradley Thornton, the man who had controlled every inch of this building for 6 months, who decided who was welcome and who was trash, stood in the center of the room with his mouth open, his hand empty, and absolutely nowhere to go. Olivia didn't raise her voice. She didn't need to. She turned from Bradley and faced the room. Every employee on the floor was standing. Every guest in the lounge had stopped mid-conversation. A woman near the elevator held her child's hand and didn't move. The jazz had stopped. Someone behind the bar had turned it off without being asked. Raymond stepped forward. He set his briefcase on the marble counter and opened it with 2 clean clicks. "My name is Raymond Ellis. I am the Chief Financial Officer of Hammond Hospitality Group." His voice was calm, precise, and loud enough to reach every corner of the lobby. "Over the past 72 hours, Ms. Hammond and our legal team have conducted a full investigation into the management practices at this property." He pulled a folder from the briefcase, then another, then a third. The findings include the following: systematic racial discrimination in hiring and termination. 11 employees of color terminated in 6 months. 0 white employees. Fraudulent expense reporting totaling over $90,000 in personal charges billed to the hotel. Unauthorized removal of company diversity initiatives and branding. Suppression of guest complaints related to discriminatory treatment. And the physical assault and unlawful removal of the property's owner from her own premises. He closed the briefcase. The clicks echoed. Olivia nodded to her HR director, a woman in a navy suit who stepped forward carrying a banker's box and a stack of documents. "Bradley Thornton." The HR director's voice was flat, professional, final. "Your employment with Hammond Hospitality Group is terminated effective immediately. Grounds: assault, racial discrimination, fraud, unauthorized policy changes, and gross misconduct. Please surrender your badge and office key." Bradley's mouth opened. "Now wait, hold on. You can't just—" "It's done," Olivia said. 2 words, quiet as a closing door. The private security consultant stepped forward. Not grabbing, not threatening, just present, just close enough. He extended one hand, palm up, waiting for the badge. Bradley's fingers went to the lanyard around his neck. They fumbled, shook. He pulled the badge over his head and held it out. The consultant took it. This is insane," Bradley's voice cracked. His eyes darted around the lobby, searching for someone, anyone who might take his side. "She set me up. This whole thing is a setup. I didn't know who she was. How was I supposed to—" "That," Olivia said, "is exactly the problem." She let the words sit. 3 seconds of silence. Then she continued. "You didn't throw water in my face because of who I am. You threw it because of what I looked like. You didn't need to know my name to treat me like a human being. And you chose not to." Bradley's jaw worked. No sound came out. The HR director turned to the front desk. "Megan Collier, your employment is also terminated, effective immediately." Grounds: complicity in discriminatory guest profiling, participation in the unlawful removal of Ms. Hammond, and failure to report workplace misconduct. Megan didn't argue. She didn't speak at all. Her face was white. Her hands shook as she unpinned her name badge and set it on the counter. She picked up her bag from behind the desk, slung it over her shoulder, and walked toward the revolving door. Tears ran down her cheeks, but she made no sound. "Calvin Moore," Raymond's voice now. "You are suspended, effective today, pending a full investigation into your role in Tuesday's incident. Your cooperation during the investigation will be a factor in the outcome." Calvin stood near the security office door. He nodded once. His face was tight. He looked at Olivia, a long look, heavy with something that might have been shame. And then he looked at the floor. The security consultant gestured toward the front door. Bradley didn't move at first. He stood in the center of the lobby, the same spot where he'd thrown water in a woman's face 3 days ago, and looked around the room one last time. Nobody met his eyes. The guests stared. Staff looked at the floor. The bellhop, who'd been frozen by the luggage cart, turned away. Bradley walked toward the revolving door. His footsteps echoed across the marble, slower than usual, heavier. The door spun. Warm air rushed in. Sunlight hit his face. He stepped onto the sidewalk, the same sidewalk where Olivia had stood dripping 3 days ago. The revolving door spun shut behind him. Through the glass, the lobby chandelier glittered. The lilies stood tall on the center table. Bradley stood there for a long moment. Then he walked to his car. He sat in the driver's seat with the engine off and his hands on the wheel. He stared at the building, the white columns, the wrought iron balconies, the jasmine garden. Then he drove away, slowly, like a man who understood for the first time that the road ahead had nothing waiting for him. Back inside, Doris Fenton crossed the lobby. She walked straight to Olivia. She didn't speak. She took Olivia's hand in both of hers, rough hands, working hands, 22 years of hands, and held it. Her eyes were wet, her chin trembled. Olivia squeezed back. One squeeze, firm and warm. That was enough. That said everything. The story didn't end when Bradley's car pulled out of the parking lot. That was just the door closing on one chapter. The next one hit harder. Monday morning, Olivia walked into the Charleston Police Department with Raymond Ellis and her 2 attorneys. She carried a leather portfolio thick enough to stop a bullet. Inside, time-stamped security footage on a flash drive, Doris's notebook, photocopied and notarized. Trish's 3-page statement, the screening email, 6 months of termination records, and the fraudulent expense reports. Detective Laura Bennett opened the portfolio at her desk. She read the first 3 pages. Then she looked up at Olivia. "How long has this been going on?" "6 months under him," Olivia said. 3 days for me personally. Bennett assigned 2 investigators by that afternoon. The charges came within the week. The Charleston City Attorney filed criminal complaints against Bradley Thornton on 4 counts: assault for throwing water and physically dragging Olivia, fraud for $90,000 in falsified personal expenses, unlawful discrimination in employment practices, and filing a false trespass claim against the owner of the property. Bradley was arrested at his apartment on a Wednesday morning. He came to the door in a wrinkled t-shirt and boxers. His hair was uncombed. His face was puffy. The neighbors watched from their balconies as 2 officers escorted him to the cruiser. He didn't resist. He stared at the pavement the whole way, the same pavement he used to drive over in his leased BMW on the way to a job he no longer had. The same week, the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission opened a parallel investigation into the Belmont's employment practices. Federal investigators arrived Thursday, 2 women in dark suits carrying document requests. They spent 3 days in the building. They interviewed 19 employees. They reviewed every termination file, every complaint log, every internal memo from the past 6 months. The Charleston Post and Courier published the story the following Monday. Front page, above the fold. Headline: Hotel owner assaulted and thrown out of her own property. CEO says discrimination was systematic. The article included security footage stills. Bradley throwing the lemon water, his hand gripping Olivia's arm, the revolving door. Direct quotes from Doris and Trish, data on the 11 terminations, and 1 line from Olivia that became the most shared sentence on the internet that week. "He didn't need to know my name to treat me with dignity. He chose not to." The story went national within 48 hours. Every major outlet picked it up. Social media detonated the security footage. 12 seconds of Bradley hurling water into Olivia's face, then dragging her across the marble while screaming, "Take out the trash!" was viewed 6 million times in 3 days. The comments sections became a flood. Thousands of people sharing their own stories, their own Bradleys, their own lobbies, their own revolving doors. 3 of the 11 employees terminated under Bradley's management contacted Raymond after seeing the news. Diane Crawford, Black, former sous chef, described being moved from the Belmont's signature restaurant to a windowless prep kitchen in the basement. No explanation, no warning. When she asked why, Bradley told her she wasn't front-of-house material. When she filed a complaint, she was terminated the next morning. Her exit paperwork cited performance issues. She'd never received a single negative review in 4 years. Carlos Rivera, Hispanic, former valet, was told on his second week that he didn't project the right image for greeting guests. He was reassigned to the laundry room. 3 weeks later, he was let go. His severance was $800 and a vague NDA that his lawyer later said wouldn't hold up in court. A third former employee, a Black front desk clerk named Angela Sims, described being scheduled exclusively for overnight shifts after Bradley took over. When she requested daytime hours, she was told the day team was already full. She quit after 2 months. She didn't file a complaint. She didn't think anyone would listen. Their testimonies were added to the legal file. The file was now 4 inches thick. The trial began 6 weeks later. Charleston County Court. Judge Helen Prescott presiding. The gallery was packed. Journalists, community activists, former employees, hospitality industry observers. 2 sketch artists sat in the front row. The prosecution opened with the security footage. The courtroom screen lit up with the lobby of the Belmont, the marble, the chandeliers, the lilies. Then Bradley appeared. Then the water. Then the dragging. Then the revolving door. The courtroom was silent. A juror in the second row closed her eyes. A journalist stopped writing. Judge Prescott watched the full clip without expression, then asked to see it a second time. Next came Bradley's screening email, read aloud by the prosecutor. Every coded phrase, every implication. The words hung in the courtroom like smoke. Doris took the stand on the second day. She brought her notebook. 22 years of entries, the last 6 months flagged with yellow tabs. She read selected passages in a voice that was steady, clear, and carried the weight of 2 decades of watching injustice and saying nothing. Until now. Trish testified on the third day. She described the culture of silence, the looks Bradley gave anyone who questioned him, the unwritten rules everyone followed. She described standing behind her concierge desk on Tuesday morning and watching a woman get water thrown in her face, and doing nothing. "Why didn't you intervene?" the prosecutor asked. "Because I was afraid," Trish said. "Because I told myself it wasn't my place. Because it was easier to look at my desk than to look at what was happening in front of me." She paused. "I have to live with that." Diane Crawford and Carlos Rivera both testified. Angela Sims submitted a written statement. Bradley's defense argued he was maintaining property standards and had no knowledge of the owner's identity. His attorney called the ejection a reasonable security decision. Judge Prescott's response during sentencing cut through every excuse like a blade. The law does not condition dignity upon recognition. Ms. Hammond did not need to reveal her name to deserve basic human respect. The defendant did not merely ask a woman to leave. He threw water in her face. He seized her arm. He dragged her across a public space. He called her filth. He called her a dead rat. She paused. These are not security decisions. These are acts of violence rooted in contempt. Sentencing. 14 months in state prison. 3 years supervised probation. Mandatory anti-discrimination training. Full restitution of $90,000 in fraudulent expenses. Permanent restraining order, barring contact with Olivia Hammond and all former Belmont employees who testified. Megan Collier was sued in civil court by Diane Crawford and Carlos Rivera. She settled out of court. Her next employer terminated her within a month of the settlement becoming public. The Belmont underwent a complete management overhaul. New leadership was installed, including 2 internal promotions of staff members of color who had been reassigned to back-of-house roles under Bradley. Hammond Hospitality Group established a company-wide anonymous reporting hotline, annual anti-discrimination audits, and an independent oversight board across all 12 properties. The case became a reference point in hospitality industry training programs nationwide, not because of the verdict, because of the video. Because of the water. Because 6 million people watched a woman stand still while a man tried to wash away her dignity, and she didn't move. 6 months later. The Belmont looked the same from the outside. White columns, wrought iron balconies, jasmine climbing the courtyard walls. The revolving door still caught the morning sun and threw light across the stone steps. But inside, everything had changed. Doris Fenton stood behind a new desk near the lobby entrance. Not a mop station, not a service hallway. A proper desk with a brass nameplate. Doris Fenton, Guest Relations Director. 22 years she'd walked these floors with her head down. 22 years of yes, sir, and right away, and biting her tongue until it bled. Now she greeted every single person who walked through that revolving door, every single one, with the same warm smile and the same 6 words. Welcome to the Belmont. Come in. She still kept a notebook, but the pages looked different now. Guest compliments, staff achievements, birthdays, anniversaries, the kind of things worth remembering. Trish Underwood stood behind the front desk. Front desk manager. The nameplate was new. The woman behind it was newer. She'd rewritten the welcome protocol herself. No profiling, no scanning, no whispered phone calls about who looks like a guest and who doesn't. Every person who approached the desk received the same greeting, the same eye contact, the same champagne offer, the same respect. The multilingual welcome signs were back. English, Spanish, French, Mandarin, mounted on the wall behind the desk in brushed gold frames. The community art wall had been restored and expanded. Local Black artists, local Latino artists, sculptures, paintings, and photographs that said something, that meant something. The generic sailboat prints were in a dumpster behind the loading dock. The staff photos reflected the actual team now. Every face, every shade, every name. The Belmont's online reviews told the rest of the story. 4.8 stars, up from 4.1. Occupancy had increased 12%. Revenue was up 15% in the second quarter. The rooftop bar had a 3-week wait list. It turned out that treating people with dignity wasn't just the right thing to do. It was good business. The kind of good business that showed up on a balance sheet in numbers. Bradley Thornton never could have delivered, because he was too busy deciding who deserved to walk through the front door. On a Tuesday morning in October, exactly 6 months after the day she was thrown out, Olivia Hammond walked into the Belmont. Linen dress, flat sandals, small leather crossbody bag, no entourage, no suit, no lawyers, just her. The revolving door spun. Warm air followed her in. The lobby smelled like lilies and fresh coffee. Doris saw her from across the room. Her face broke into a wide, bright smile. "Morning, Miss Hammond." Olivia smiled back. "Morning, Doris." She walked through the lobby, slowly, the way she always did. She paused at the chandelier and looked up. She touched the marble counter with her fingertips. She breathed in the lilies. Everything was the same, and everything was different. She sat in the lounge, ordered a coffee, black in a white ceramic cup, opened her laptop, read guest reviews, watched the lobby breathe. At 10:30, a young black family walked through the revolving door. Mother, father, 2 small children, suitcases and a stroller. The little girl clutched a stuffed bear to her chest with both arms. Trish stepped out from behind the front desk. She smiled. A real smile, the kind that reaches the eyes. "Welcome to the Belmont. We have your suite ready, and we've sent up some chocolate and champagne. The chocolate is for the kids. The champagne is for you. You've earned it." The mother laughed. The father shook Trish's hand. The little girl waved the stuffed bear at Doris, who waved back. Olivia watched from the lounge. Her coffee warmed her hands. The morning sun came through the tall lobby windows and fell across the marble floor in long, gold rectangles. She didn't need anyone to know who she was. She just needed to know that everyone who walked through that door was treated the way they deserved. So here's what I want to know. If you were standing in that lobby, not as the owner, not as someone with power or a name or a title, just as yourself, and you watched a man throw water in a woman's face and drag her out the door for no reason other than how she looked, would you say something? Or would you look away? Be honest. Drop it in the comments. And if this story hit you, if it made your jaw tighten, or your chest heavy, or your fist close, share it. Send it to someone who needs to hear it. Hit that like button, subscribe, because these stories aren't stopping, not until things change. The Belmont is fictional. Olivia Hammond is fictional. But that revolving door? That's real. People get shoved through it every single day. Out of hotels, restaurants, stores, offices, rooms where they have every right to stand. Olivia built the whole hotel, but she shouldn't have had to own the building just to be treated like a human being. I'll see you in the next one. Stay loud, stay kind, and never let anyone tell you which door you're allowed to walk through.